We're on? Okay, my name is John Teague. This is the Police Policy Committee for May 19th, 2022. I have a couple of things to read here. First is kind of long, but stick with me. This is a public meeting subject to public meeting law, and it will be digitally recorded. Deliberation of issues will only be conducted by the corrections, should be Police Policy Committee members, unless permitted by the chair. Remember to always state your name for the record. For cases dealing with denial or revocation, only information contained in the staff report can be considered once the staff report is adopted. Assumptions, outside knowledge, or personal experiences should not be included in any discussion. Individuals who engage in disruptive behavior that impedes the official business will be asked to stop being disruptive or leave the meeting. Additional measures may be taken to have disruptive individuals removed if their continued presence poses a safety risk to the other persons in the room or makes it impossible to continue the meeting. Also a new process for doing introductions. Staff will call the roll. When you hear your name, please state your name again and who you represent. Once the committee roll is taken, staff in the room will announce themselves and their titles, followed by any other attendees that are present in the room or online. So you're calling roll? Okay, have at it.
All right. Chair Teague.
John Teague, representing Oregon Association Chiefs of Police.
Committee Member Barrett.
Denisha Barrett, non-management law enforcement.
Committee Member Clevenger.
James Clevenger, non-management law enforcement.
Committee Member Gardner.
Alex Gardner, OSP Command Staff.
Committee Member Garton.
Mark Garton, Oregon State Sheriff's Association.
Committee Member Kenny.
Zach Kenny, non-management law enforcement.
Committee Member McAlpine.
Kathy McAlpine, Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police.
Committee Member Roush.
Mark Roush, public member.
Committee Member Rowan.
Terry Rowan, Oregon State Sheriff's Association.
Committee Member Thistle.
Bill Thistle, non-management law enforcement, Oregon Peace Officers Association.
Okay, I want to give you some changes to the agenda real quick. Sorry? I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Marsha Moran, Standards and Certification Program Manager.
Melissa Lang, Case Manager with DPSST.
Erica Riddell, Committee Support.
Alexander, Executive Assistant.
Brian Henson, Acting Director.
Susie Herring, Professional Standards Division Director.
Hassan Hassan, Training Division Director.
Jennifer Howell, Rules Coordinator.
Ron DeBerry, OSP, Oregon State Police.
Robert Wood, future public member.
Anybody else? We're good?
Chair Teague.
Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff Brandenburg, representing Oregon State Sheriff's Association.
Okay.
Sorry.
Anybody else?
Good morning.
Thank you. Anybody else not get called on?
We have a number on the line that hasn't been identified.
Okay. 541. So we have a number of ending in 88 that's online. Can you tell us who you are?
Yeah, this is Michael Schaff.
Okay, very good. So do you leave him here or do you park him somewhere else?
It would be here. I can't move to it.
Okay, very good. Okay, so for the agenda, we have 5 people giving mitigation. Some have traveled across state, and one has court. So we've got some changes in how the agenda is going to flow. So everybody knows, you might make this notation. Alexandra Conwell, number 5. She'll be the first that we're here. Moro Lopez Pena, number 4, will be the second that we'll hear. David Dominy, number 7, will be the third that we'll hear. Ashley Dalton, number 6, will be the 4th. And Michael Schaff, number 8, will be the 5th. And do you have anything else before I move on to minutes? Okay. I assume you've read the minutes. We need some discussion or a motion to approve.
Alex Gardner, move to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Who's calling roll? Very good.
Chair Teague.
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett.
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg.
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger.
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner.
Aye.
Committee Member Garten. Committee Member Kenny.
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine.
Aye.
Committee Member Roush.
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan.
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle.
Aye.
Passed.
Okay, very good. On to administrative closures. And is Melissa, you doing that?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Melissa Langbacha for the record. DPSST has two administrative closures that it's presenting today. The first is for Buck Basnett. Officer Basnett submitted an application for certifications, and on the application that he had submitted to the department, it listed criminal citations that weren't previously reported to the department. After determining that those convictions occurred prior to his employment in law enforcement, those criminal convictions were reviewed under the pre-employment statuses, and then the department also reviewed the forms that Officer Basnett had submitted to the department because he had previously completed applications and forms for DPSST but had not reported his convictions on those forms that he submitted. After reviewing all of the information that was provided, the department determined that Basnett had submitted false information to the department, but that the information that he provided was not intentional and did not violate the board's moral fitness standards. The second is for Lissa Richmond. Officer Richmond resigned from the Corvallis Police Department during an investigation into her work performance on a specific case. Documentation from her agency indicates that the case which was assigned to Richmond required a significant amount of follow-up interviews, which she failed to complete in a timely manner. Additionally, her agency indicated that her work performance issues would not have resulted in her termination if she would have stayed on. DPSST determined that her separation and conduct was indicative of a poor work performance and not a moral fitness issue. Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. Anybody have any questions or discussion on those? Good to approve?
Make a motion.
Go ahead.
Zach Kenny, make a motion that we approve.
Second. Good. Go ahead, Mark.
Mark Garten, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Again, no discussion? Okay, Eric.
All right, we're voting on motion to approve administrative closure. Chair Teague.
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett.
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg.
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger.
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner.
Aye.
Committee Member Garten.
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny.
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine.
Aye.
Committee Member Rouch.
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan.
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, we are on to Alexandria Cromwell. She'll be giving verbal mitigation. Hey, Marcia, who's timing?
Melissa.
Let's do your time, right?
Yes.
You tell them they got like 30 seconds. Something like that. Morning, Ms. Cromwell. And you'll have 5 minutes to give verbal mitigation, and you just talk. You want to ask any questions. Okay. Melissa will time you, and she'll tell you when you're getting close to the end, and we'll start on you.
Introduction.
Oh, yeah. By the way, guys, I'm recovering from an illness and you'll probably pick that up. That's a small part of it. Go ahead.
Melissa Lane Botcha for the record. DPSST is presenting a case for the committee's review for Alexandra Cromwell. Officer Cromwell was terminated from a probationary employment with the Yamhill County Sheriff's Office. Her termination was a result of progressive discipline for multiple policy violations, including 2 at-fault car accidents while on duty and some reporting deficiencies. The department identified in her termination documentation conduct that met the criteria for misconduct, in that she operated her assigned patrol vehicle in an unsafe manner and caused an accident that harmed persons. Cromwell operated her assigned patrol vehicle in an unsafe manner which threatened to harm persons. Cromwell operated her assigned patrol vehicle in an unsafe manner and caused multiple accidents that harmed property. Cromwell checked out a civil order and did not serve or return to the office at the end of her shift, which threatened the efficient operations of her agency. And the failure to serve the civil paperwork threatened the safety of another person. Mr. Chair, so if we're ready, I can.
Okay, so once again, you'll have 5 minutes and Melissa will be timing you and we'll start on you.
Good morning. My name is Officer Cromwell, Alexandria Cromwell, and I work for the Newburgh-Dundee Police Department. I got into law enforcement in May of 2020 after wanting to be a police officer for almost all of my life. My mom tells a story that I came to her when I was 8 years old. I told her that I wanted to be a police officer. She said I never wavered or changed my mind. I grew up in a household where police contact was more regular than it wasn't. My mother was a domestic violence survivor, my father being her abuser. I have a vivid memory of a female police officer holding my hand when I was young, telling me that I would be okay. That memory has remained with me, and I grew up wanting to be just like that officer. Being able to show up at the worst moments of people's lives and maybe having a positive impact like that officer had on me. These events and mistakes I made while I was employed with Yamhill County are lessons, memories, and teaching moments that I apply not only to my everyday life, but how I perform my law enforcement duties. As you are aware, I failed to serve a civil paper and return it to my office. By doing so, I heighten the risk to a member of the community that I serve. This has caused me to be hypervigilant, not only of policy, but the attention to detail and thoroughness and how I perform even the smallest of tasks. I was also involved in 2 crashes while at Yamhill County, one where I was transporting a member of my community. I caused a crash in which I was the at-fault driver. As I mentioned in my written mitigation, I take full responsibility for this incident. This mistake has changed me as a person. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And a police officer. And I know that I will carry the weight of this mistake for the rest of my life. I think about it every day when I put on my uniform. And it stays with me as I conduct routine patrol, respond to calls, or operate a vehicle. I am more cautious, attentive, and prudent in how I carry out my obligations to my department and my community. If given the opportunity to continue my career in law enforcement, I know that I have more to do. I care about the safety, livability, and the prosperity of the community that I am fortunate enough to serve. I understand that working in law enforcement is a privilege, and it is not one that I take lightly. I know that I have a responsibility to my community, my department, and myself to perform at the highest level of moral fortitude. I'd like an opportunity to make my family, my agency, and that little girl who wanted to be a police officer proud. If I am given the chance, I will continue to grow, learn, and become wiser from the mistakes that I have made. I thank you for your time today and giving me an opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. And a reminder, we need some discussion towards a motion to adopt the record, followed by more discussion if necessary, and a motion for action or no board action, a recommendation of action or no board action. So let's begin discussion.
Mark Rouch, for the record, this one honestly struck me, and I realized the line between poor performance and misconduct that amounts to a moral goodness issue can get kind of hazy sometimes, but and the one instance of failing to serve legal papers that potentially could have resulted in harm was probably the closest. The others seem pretty clearly to me like work performance issues and carelessness that Officer Cromwell has learned from, and I'm sure she's learned from the first one I mentioned as well. And I think that really, in balance, amounts to a poor work performance issue too. So I personally didn't see this as a actionable misconduct issue.
Catherine Telpine for the record. Totally agree with Mr. Roush. I too see where Yamhill felt they needed to kind of end this employment. However, reviewing Chief Kosmecki's comments on why he took a chance with Newburgh Dundee and that she has performed, I do believe we often have a high liability, but we can be corrective, especially when you're receptive and own things. And so I too don't see that this rises to the level of board action.
I have some strong opinions about this, and I'll try to keep it short because I think we're all trending in the same direction. But in reviewing this, a couple of things kind of struck me. One, Ms. Cromwell was hired in the pandemic, right? And that experience of policing, especially those first several months of the pandemic, were atypical. At least my experience with trainees is they didn't get the kind of reps, the same kind of work experience that one would expect. I think it's very normal for an officer in the beginning of their career to wreck their car, to forget to do things. And if I recall on here, Officer Cromwell had not been hadn't completed probationary period, but I don't think it was right around a year, or not even a year when these things are happening. So less than a year as a police officer and making everyday normal mistakes, forgetting the stalking order. That may carry bigger consequences, but forgetting a piece of paperwork is not misconduct, right? In and of itself. I think that's a high level expectation that we're having here. I think, these are all things, in my opinion, that should be handled within the FTEP program, the probationary process, and dismissing somebody. This is the second meeting in a row we've received something from Yamhill County where the disciplinary process and misconduct is being applied to normal probationary issues. And I don't think this is the right forum for that. And I understand the abundance of caution that staff has to assign when trying to decide whether something goes in front of us or not. However, as we can see, the emotional toll this is taking on what I believe is probably an otherwise good police officer who screwed up as a brand new trainee. And I don't think this is a fair way to treat people. And I'm leaving. This is my last meeting. I would just say that, going forward, if there's a way to fix that, we need to do that because this isn't a kind process for people. And I don't think that this is fair to a human being. There's some allergies or something in the room. My eyes got a little wet when you were talking. I don't know, if there was something going on there, but I just reading this, I kept kind of flipping back and forth and was just like, why are we looking at a brand new police officer doing brand new police officer stuff as it's misconduct? That's my 2 cents. I struggle with this one because my understanding is that by adopting the staff report as written, we are acknowledging that there is a level of misconduct, and I don't even think there's a level of misconduct that doesn't rise to board action. I just flat out don't think this is misconduct. I think it's completely miscategorized. And so from that, I have a hard time even voting for that to adopt the staff record. That's my 2 cents. I got off my soapbox.
Can I just, Melissa Langbacho for the record. I just wanted to note that our administrative rules don't provide me the discretion to make that call. But it does provide the committee the ability to negate those moral fitness violations or to change the staff report to an administrative closure.
Yes, John T. Yeah, you didn't have to say that, Melissa. We understand that.
Yeah, and I just want to be very clear. Sorry to interrupt there, but I'm by no means I understand you guys are in a rock and a hard place with trying to interpret the rules and make sure that you're covering it. I just don't like where this landed.
I'm going to say this too. You talk about not being fair. I know this is a rabbit hole. I'm going to say it anyway. Last meeting, we dealt with an excessive use of force finding from an agency that came to us as discretionary, and we took no action on that. The rules have changed now. If an agency separates for what they term to be an excessive use of force, which we did not see that as excessive use of force, that's no longer discretionary. It's mandatory. That guy would have been gone if we had heard that. We wouldn't have heard this session. He would have been gone. So it's worse than it even currently exists, which is unfortunate. I believe it's unfair. It was the rules within which we have to operate. So, Alex, you look like you're thinking about something.
I'm Alex Gardner for the record. Thank you, Chief. I'm thinking about how to ask the chair if we can make a motion for an administrative closure, if that's the proper protocol.
Well, do we need to, as opposed to just taking no action? It still ends it. But what are the consequences of it taking no action versus administrative closure? The reason why I ask is because this is somewhere we've never gone before.
I think if you take no action but adopt the staff report, it would be acknowledging, like committee member Kenny mentioned, that those issues were moral fitness violations. And if you changed it to an administrative closure, then it would not.
So we make a recommendation to the board to either take action or not take action. This would be a recommendation to the board to make an administrative closure. Go ahead.
I believe if you negate the moral fitness findings and administratively close it, that it wouldn't go to the board, but I would need to double check.
While she's looking, Mark, you had something to say?
Well, just my reaction to listening to this, and I agree. It seems like, as far as what's going to be on the record, if we as a committee voted to consider a motion to change it to an administrative closure, or instruct staff to change it to an administrative closure, that would seem procedurally appropriate to me. But like you say, it's never come up before in my time on that.
Yeah, we have in the past talked about having a grand jury of sorts that makes these decisions before they get here. It may be time to discuss that again, Marcia. So Melissa is looking to see if we can simply move for administrative closure. I suppose even if we do that, we should adopt the record. Would you agree, Melissa, or no?
I think if you adopt it as written, it specifically says that there are moral fitness violations. So if we
Can we make a motion to amend the staff report and then to reflect that there is no misconduct? Is that the better way to handle that?
Either of you have any?
Yes, I'm not seeing where the committee actually has the ability to do that. So I would say that the best action would be what you're recommending, is to say that the committee doesn't find the misconduct.
So that we're amend the staff report. So I'll make a motion that we amend the staff report to reflect that the department does not identify elements of misconduct. Then we adopt that and take no action.
Yeah, before you get a second.
I'm looking to, just want to make sure, because you can affirm, modify, or negate the moral fitness violation. So you negate it or modify it. Yeah.
So it would seem from that, Mark Crouch, for the record, that we could move to negate staff's finding of a moral fitness violation.
Before we get a second, it's easier to let something die for lack of a second. Before we get a second, let's let staff figure out.
Or are we better off seeing we just table this and figure out the best way to make this, like, I don't know if there's lawyers that can look at this or something, but.
Yeah. The other option would just be send it back to the department, and then the department would change that to administrative closure. You'd see it again at the next meeting as administrative closure.
Okay, so that's a more natural path, is not to adopt the record, to send it back to staff and have staff represent it.
Okay.
Brian Hinton for the record. The only concern I have with that, though I do think it's a known path, is staff has already found a moral fitness violation. So what changes staff's finding? So I would think you would probably do this in a two-step process. First, I would negate the finding and then amend the report and then vote on the amendment. That's my thoughts.
Marcia Moore, for the record, I would agree. You've already pretty much negated the staff report. So kind of the question is do we adopt the staff report in the, as you guys have discussed it, that it really does not, there is no moral fitness, and move it forward, or do we send it back through?
Alex Gardner for the record. I sort of favor the solution that states what this committee thinks as a matter of policy and as a matter of getting this officer off the hot seat,
right,
rather than having it back in the system for another couple of months. So I'd move as the acting director suggested.
With all of this, sorry, Denise Barrett for the record, with this all being available online in the CliffsNotes version though, does it make information about Officer Cromwell readily available that isn't necessarily reflective of our conversation unless somebody reads it in the fine print, that we did not find it, if that makes sense, versus an administrative closure getting put on there with a much smaller condensed?
The board report, which would say that you negated the moral fitness findings, would be posted.
Is that part of the first language, or is that buried on page 5 or 6 though?
It would be the first item so we just kind of smush everything together. So it would be the first document that is on the web.
Mark Raj, again, I'm sorry to be, I'm getting myself a little confused here. Are we then voting to not adopt the staff report for the reason that we don't feel there is that we don't feel misconduct was identified in the staff report?
So in the
because it seems like if we adopt the staff report says there was misconduct.
So in the directions on the actual staff report, it says adopt the staff report to include any changes identified after discussion. So the change that's been identified is this is not a moral fitness violation. And so you've told us that. And so that's now the changes that we've documented, that these instances are not a moral fitness violation. Then you can adopt that staff report, and pretty much there's no action at that point because you've said there's no moral fitness violation. So we can send that to the board as informational, because you're not asking the board to take action or to not take action. You've had the ability to approve the admin closures up until this point, so it's just a little bit of a.
So Alex Gardner for the record, just in terms of procedure, it seems like if there's going to be a finding that this is not a moral fitness issue, there has to be a vote on that.
Yes,
that
for the adopt the staff report piece.
So like to amend it and adopt it would be what the motion would be?
Yeah.
It seems like once that has happened, that's the new record, and that's subject to administrative closure. It doesn't have to go to the board.
Yeah.
It's very, yeah.
So we should amend the record, adopt the record, and send it back to staff with its amendment.
Yes, so moved.
And staff can administrative close. So I don't remember your.
I think that was my motion, but now we've talked about a bunch of stuff, but I'll make it again. I move that we amend the staff report to reflect that the department did not identify elements of misconduct, and that then we adopt the staff report on the with the amendment.
And what, a friendly amendment to your motion to direct staff to administratively close the case.
I would second that motion.
So y'all good with that?
Yeah.
As good as you can.
Brian Newton, for the record, our concern here is, well, the question here is, could you make a motion to administratively close it after this motion now, or does that actually have to go back and come back the next time to then administratively close?
I was thinking it would be all in one, but that might be good. The next one is to
I just don't want to
administratively close it.
And legally, do we need to separate this into multiple votes? Which I would think if we end up with unanimous votes on it all as a package, it would mean that we would have passed it in piecemeal. But
I would think his motion is good to send it back. And I would expect to hear it next time as an admin closure. Okay. Yeah, so we'll do that. And you'll be fine, okay? We have a motion, we have a second. Everybody understands, right? Okay.
Okay, we are voting on a motion to amend the staff report and then to adopt it. So
And to recommend administrative.
and then
closure.
to recommend
It's not
to
to recommend, to
administrative.
direct staff to make it.
Chair Teague,
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett,
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg,
Aye.
sorry, Committee Member Brandenburg,
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger,
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner,
Aye.
Committee Member Garten, Committee Member Kenny,
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine,
Aye.
Committee Member Roush,
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan,
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, very good. Your next hearing, Mauro Lopez Pena.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Great.
Probably one of the best for application letters.
Yeah.
There were two letters that were really well written in this one.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, my rich friends are walking.
Okay.
I'm running this meeting. And so far. They're gonna have to take a rock and beat. They're gonna have to put it down.
Yeah.
That's true. Rock anywhere, I'll do what's left over.
No, it doesn't. Mr. Chair, we have Officer Mauro Lopez Pena here. Oh, sorry. Melissa Lane Bacho for the record. DPSST is presenting a review of Officer Lopez Pena's arrest for disorderly conduct intoxicated at a public level that presents a danger or disturbs the peace that he received in Caldwell, Idaho. Officer Lopez Pena pled guilty to disturbing the peace, willfully disturbs neighborhood, and the judgment was withheld, and the charges were dismissed February 8th, 2022.
DPSST identified in the information provided that Officer Lopez Pena violated criminal law and pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge. And that Officer Lopez Pena attempted to harm another person when he slapped the hand of a police officer. And I have a timer ready whenever you're ready.
Okay, Mr. Lopez, then you'll have 5 minutes to give legal mitigation. We won't be asking you questions if you're not allowed to. Melissa will be timing you. She'll give you some notice when your time is almost up.
Okay.
We'll start on you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to make sure that you guys did get that letter where I explained to the committee. I'm not here to sit down and give you guys excuses of what I did. I know I screwed up, I messed up, and I drove here to own up to my mistake. This has been one of the hardest things I've been through in my personal and work life, especially work life. I know what I did was wrong. I know what happened that night was wrong. And I have learned from that mistake. And I no longer place myself in situations like that. I want to say that I never did try to lie or hide this to my, to my employers, sheriff's office. I immediately notified my agency, my supervisors. I kept DPSST updated on my case. I took responsibility with the courts, completed what they told me to. At the end of the day, I just wanted to own up to it. I don't think this one time represents who I truly am. Again, I know I did wrong, and I'm trying to do the best what I can to fix it. I know sometimes you can't fix things, but there's a right way to make it a little better if you can. I think my agency is, I believe that my agency is confident that I can perform my job still because I'm a hard worker. I want to keep my job. I want to work with my agency still, and I want to continue to serve my community. Again, I'm not here to give excuses. I'm here to take responsibility. I did wrong. And thank you for your time.
Very good, thank you. As always, the discussion towards adoption of the record, more discussion necessary towards a recommendation for board action or not.
Mark Roach will kick it off again with my reaction, which is pretty brief. It's hard for me to find there was not misconduct in the circumstances of this case. A police officer getting drunk, interacting with another police officer, having physical contact with him. I don't know, technically assault, I guess. Everything I read, I came to the conclusion that there was misconduct. That doesn't mean I think it should be actionable. He did pay his fines. He paid his fines and was disciplined by his employer, and that's all been dealt with. From what's in the record one very day, it sounds like genuine intent to improve and move forward. So anyway, I guess that's it. I thought there was misconduct. I personally don't think it was actionable.
Ms. John Teague, that was my take too. I thought his mitigation was good. I'm speaking up because I want to commend Niagara County for the investigation they did. They really dived down into the intentions and motivations behind his misconduct. And you don't oftentimes see that in these personnel investigations. So I commend them for that. And it led me, initially I thought this was going to precipitate board action. And upon reading that investigation, I'm just the other way. I do not recommend board action.
Yeah, Captain McAlpin, for the record, I too feel the same way and also felt that we wouldn't rise to the level of action. But I believe all the information was there to accurately reflect what happened, to include their decision making from that department, and the officer is willing to accept responsibility.
Anybody to the contrary? Get a motion to adopt the record.
Alex Gardner, so moved.
Second with Angela Brandenburg, looks like. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the record. Any further discussion on the record? Fair.
All right, we are voting on a motion to adopt the staff report. Chair Teague.
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett.
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg.
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger.
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner.
Aye.
Committee Member Garten.
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny.
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine.
Aye.
Committee Member Rauch.
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan.
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, any further discussion or a motion?
Zach came for the record, just to add to like kind of the mitigating on this. Chief, we talked about the quality of the investigation. I was very impressed that it wasn't just taking everything at face value and like, let's kind of nail down like why this is happening and what happened. The fact that his agency gave him, I believe it was a 2-day suspension for this, I think kind of indicates the level. I would put that as the mitigating circumstances, that like the level that we should be, level of effort or sure, not effort, but the level of attention that we as a board should be giving this. I'd make a motion that we take no action.
I'll second that motion. Mark Crouch.
We have a motion and a second to recommend no board action. Any further discussion? Fair.
All right, we are voting on a motion to take no action. Chair Teague.
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett.
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg.
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger.
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner.
Aye.
Committee Member Garten.
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny.
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine.
Aye.
Committee Member Rauch.
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan.
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle.
Aye.
Motion passed.
You're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for repeating the motion for the vote.
We're doing Officer Dominey next?
Yes.
Okay.
Next is David Dominey. Melissa's going to introduce this, and I'll give you a chance to speak. Okay?
Thank you.
Melissa Lane Bacho for the record. So we have, the department is presenting today David Dominey's separation from the Lebanon Police Department. Officer Dominy signed a separation agreement with the Lebanon Police Department while they were investigating allegations, which determined that Officer Dominy had driven a patrol car at excessive speeds, that he was untruthful in reporting, and he was untruthful about pointing a firearm at a man involved in a domestic violence situation. The department reviewed the information and identified areas that met the criteria for moral fitness violations. For dishonesty, the department identified that Dominy repeatedly stated that he called the Lebanon Police Department to report his contact with law enforcement in his witnessing of a domestic violence situation, when in fact he did not. Officer Dominy stated that he did not point his weapon at a man during a domestic dispute, when in fact he did. Officer Dominy was dishonest by omission when he failed to disclose the male he contacted during the domestic dispute, stated, "What are you gonna shoot me?" Additionally, the department identified conduct in the misconduct category, specifically that Dominy violated criminal law and was charged with unlawful use of a weapon and menacing, which included disorderly conduct. Dominy threatened others when he pulled out his firearm while two persons were lawfully on the property he is renting. Dominy threatened others by driving at excessive speeds to pass a school bus. And Dominy threatened a man when he pulled his firearm out during a domestic situation he encountered while off duty. Mr. Chair, and I'll have a 5-minute timer here.
Okay, Mr. Dominy, you'll have 5 minutes to give mitigation, and we're not allowed to ask any questions of you. Melissa will keep the timer. She'll let you know your time is almost up.
Okay, thank you.
Begin on you.
Awesome, thank you. As you know, my name is David Dominy. I appreciate you guys letting me speak to you guys today. Thank you. I trust you guys have had the opportunity to review the documentation and all the pictures and everything that I submitted to you guys. That took several hours to get everything together. All the accusations that you're seeing are false. That's why I'm taking so much time to fight this and to go against this. From day one of the police academy back in 2008, it was instilled into my mind: you lie, you die. That was a common thing that was always told to us, and that was drilled into our heads. If you lie, you lose your career. You're done. That was something that that stuck with me from day one, and it still to this day sticks with me. As a devout Christian, which I am, I live my life under that same guise. So in my personal life as well as under law enforcement, I follow that same guise. Excuse me. I embrace honesty and integrity as two of the most important things to keep intact. I believe I've showed that within my life and throughout my career. My personnel file, which includes all my evaluations, have nothing attacking my integrity or honesty. And I was, and I still am, a well-respected member of the community over in the city of Lebanon, as well as the city of Sweet Home. And that also includes the school district where I worked for the last 5 years of my career. Throughout my career at the Lebanon Police Department, I held several leadership positions: acting sergeant, team leader, field training officer. For both officers, dispatchers. I was a school resource officer. I was the coordinator for the reserve program and the cadets. I was given a lot of responsibilities. A lot of trust was instilled in me to do these positions. I did those for 17 years. Never had a blemish. Never had an issue. Never had a problem until these incidents were brought up by my ex-wife. I was also entrusted to teach ALICE training, ALICE active shooter response training, as well as standard response protocol to all of the school district people, as well as the police department. I orchestrated a 9/11 ceremony. That was something that I brought to the table, and I mentioned that to the chief of police. Said, "Hey, can I do this?" He said, "Absolutely." 5 years, I was allowed to do that. I was given the trust. I was given the responsibility to do that, and I did it really well. And that's from feedback from several other people that brought it to me. I had over 100 participants from the Valley, including many citizens from Lebanon community and students from the schools that I was entrusted to protect. All of this was done because I had honesty, I had trust, I had responsibility, and and it was all because I was able to use those from day one. None of these accomplishments would have been possible without having those things. I see that all of these accomplishments that I did, I see that they have two things in common: leadership and training. I was trusted to lead and train officers, reserves, cadets, dispatchers, call takers, you name it, for almost 17 years. I was also entrusted to create and lead that ceremony, which I did. Without those, I wouldn't have held and retained those positions, nor would I have been successful in putting on such a prestigious ceremony. These are all things that that require honesty, transparency, and integrity. Three things that I've held very close. If honesty and integrity were a question throughout my career, none of the successes I achieved would have been possible. The businesses, parents, kids, people from all walks of life trusted me to keep them safe, which I did. And I held that very close to my heart, which I still do. The chief and administration were ones that also held that they trusted me. After nearly 17 years of successful law enforcement career and no accusations of dishonesty, I now stand before you guys due to accusations levied against me that are supported by, honestly, no facts. Mere fabrication created by unfinished and shoddy investigations done by the Lebanon Police Department, and accusations that eyewitnesses and evidence discounted. If you look at the information and stuff that I presented to you guys. In the documentation I provided to you, I highlight those inconsistencies and provided evidence to show that the statements that I made were beyond any reasonable doubt true. I remain consistent with my accounts of what occurred from the beginning and would get the same facts about those incidents today. I pray you guys see the inconsistencies and poor investigation that was done on the part of the Lebanon Police Department, which resulted in these false accusations.
Okay, thank you. Some discussion.
Well, Alex Gardner, for the record. I struggled my way through this and reread a lot of it more than once because anything that arises in the context of a dissolving domestic relationship, I approach with some skepticism, I suppose is the right word. But for me, the constellation of events it's sort of a totality of the circumstances analysis for me. And I just don't think there's the potential for that much confusion in the record. The last piece that is among the most disturbing to me is that it's not unclear what the department thought about this. And in his application for the security certification, he says, the investigation revealed that both incidents were unfounded. However, the administration decided to send them to DPSST for review for dishonesty. And it's clear, at least from the department circumstances, they were not unfounded. There's a robust body of evidence there, and their conclusions are pretty clear. So that alone, even without all of the other problematic pieces, is concerning to me.
Mark Rouch, for the record, I'm curious to hear what the other police officers on the committee have to say, but it occurs to me right now to agree with Chief Gardner that that was one of the things that really jumped out at me as I got to the end of this as well, is how can this be described as being unfounded? There was clearly an investigation. It just simply did not compute. It was kind of an exclamation point at the end of it, in my opinion. But I have some other thoughts, but I'd like to hear from others.
Yes, this is John Teague. So I'm curious, what was founded? I see two questions here, I guess. One was did he or didn't he report the domestic violence? And I guess the answer to the question is, should he have or not? And is that misconduct or not? The other is, was he going 65 or 100? So these to me seem to be the two questions that are either founded or not.
And if I might add, Chief Alex Gardner, for the record, did he or did he not put the public at risk by that driving behavior? And did he or did he not point a gun in that domestic violence? There were, for me, it's the overall weight of the evidence, all these people weighing in, and they don't, including the guy on the side of the road. And that's why I say, for lack of a better word of describing it, I just can't reconcile that much misunderstanding from that many points of view. And, you know, for example, when his son says that he's over 100 miles an hour, there's no denial. There's no suggestion that he wasn't over 100 miles an hour. The denial and suggestion that maybe it was something else only comes when he's investigated.
So this is John T. again. My family also uses Life 360, and yeah, it sometimes shows people going 80 on Highway 22. Is that what it is? Like me going back home from work, and I'm clearly not. I don't really should be ever going 100, but it definitely does make mistakes. So I made a comment in my notes that Lieutenant Bressler's highlights on page 815, page 19, they're different than mine. His highlights are all contrary to Mr. Dominy, and my highlights are different. My highlights are that the bus drivers found by no means, they was probably going around 55 or 60. Bus driver that she wasn't worried about how Dominy passed and what he did because he came around the buses. Another that she felt what the officer did was safe. So I mean, these are the highlights I pulled out. I kind of felt like the agency took a particular posture, and I'm just concerned that sometimes the posture gives inertia to an investigation, and I want to make sure that we don't ride that same inertia.
Mark Rhodes for the record again. I agree that the thing with the speeding is unclear. I'm not familiar with this software program or whatever it is, but I can understand conceptually how it could jump ahead and maybe be misaccurate. I think what bothered me most about it's not the only. I think the only reference to it happening when he passed the school buses is what he said in his text, but he also almost brags about it. He doesn't deny it. The son says 100 miles an hour, and he says sometimes being a cop can be fun! Exclamation point. Enough said about that. I would agree it's kind of inconclusive. What I was referring to in my earlier remark, and maybe it's something different, but I'm looking at page A50, Exhibit A15, page 5. In misconduct regarding the incident that occurred at my residence on February 11th, where I was charged with unlawful use of a weapon. We haven't really talked about that. That was the barn incident and disorderly conduct. It's pertinent to note the Polk County Sheriff's Office did not file formal charges against me, and there was no conviction stemming from this incident. He was arrested and jailed, and it was referred to the DA, if I'm not mistaken. And the DA elected not to prosecute it because he didn't feel he could prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal court of law that a crime had been committed. But so I might have been referring to something different than what you were, but that I found is a very inconsistent statement.
Barrett, for the record, when we're talking about things that are reported by ex-spouses or in dirty water relationships, I too take things with a grain of salt. So I put a lot more weight on the barn incident with somebody that's not an employee and not an ex-spouse or future ex-spouse. I made some notes regarding everything, because again, I can't pinpoint one certain thing similar to what Gardner said. That it appears that there's some quick temperedness, poor judgment, decision making. And when you circle that with personal and professional, you kind of flirt that line between power and authority. And that is concerning to me. I definitely think that there's enough here for misconduct, of which his verbal mitigation didn't touch on. He only highlights the integrity component of this. And I find that concerning as well.
Zach, I agree with both what you just said, Denisha and Alex. Definitely, like, it's the totality thing that is kind of nagging at me, because when I look at any of these, I'm like, well, and Chief, when you point out with the investigation that it kind of had, I don't know if a predetermined outcome, but it definitely was like this is what I think happened, so let's find things that we can do to prove it, rather than what happened and what conclusions can I draw from that. And that was definitely the feel I got from it. As far as the driving at excessive speeds, I put a lot more faith in the professional school drivers. I mean, they drive a school bus every day to be able to estimate an approximate speed they think they're past, whether they thought it was safe or not. Just to give you an idea, a difference of 1,000 feet on that hit from the cell tower or GPS or however that app works is, if you're assuming a 60 miles an hour, is good for about 11 miles an hour difference. If you get a 15-second lag and a 2,000 foot difference, it shows you, I think, over 100 miles an hour. I did the back of the envelope math on that. I'm not a math genius, but I went to Oregon State University, so it's close enough. I got an engineering degree. So, but just some very, very, basic back of the envelope math. It doesn't take a lot of inaccuracy on that app, especially with a short sample size, a short distance, to have something very wrong on that. So I basically give that no credit or credence whatsoever. And was he probably going faster than he should? Yes. But also, I think there's probably a lot of people who see me driving or any other cop driving on a regular basis. They go, "Oh my God, that's ridiculous the way you're driving," not taking into account that I'm highly trained at driving. I drive at speed with regularity, and I know what issue I'm going to go deal with. They don't, right? And so I think that it just doesn't hold much water for me. As far as the witness to the domestic dispute, to me, reading the interview, the interview information and the other things, it really looked to me like he truly believes he made that phone call. And all I can say is, is this happening when his marriage is falling apart? He's like, that's something I would have done. Again, I'm going to assign, I don't think there was a desire to be dishonest in that. It's too easy of a thing to get caught. And the fact that he said, I believe I made it, I'm looking at his records and I'm not seeing that. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as going, hey, my memory's not accurate, but I'm going to defer to the unbiased piece of evidence, right? So again, I don't see that. With regard to the pointing a gun, I've seen multiple situations in my career where when an officer pulls a gun out, somebody sees the gun, they go, that officer pointed a gun at me, and that gun was never pointed at somebody. That gun was out. It was definitely out. The mere act of drawing a firearm and having it present is enough for somebody to assume it was pointed at them because they're scared, because that's way, way further than they've ever seen a gun, right? They've seen a gun on a table. They've seen it, used, maybe a shot at range. They've never seen somebody draw it with the intent to use it if necessary. So again, I had some problems with how that interview of those two individuals was conducted. I don't think that there was an effort to make sure that wasn't tainted. The fact that it was kind of over the phone and it kind of slapdash, again, I had a problem with that. But then we get to the poor decision making with regard to the horse barn, and I think this is, I agree, where I kind of started to have issues with it. I guess maybe I missed it, but there was another witness who said that backed up what Mr. Domedy said, that the gun was not pointed at this other retired police officer, that it was held what I'm assuming is the sole position is what they're describing, with the up to the chest but not pointed at anybody. And so it's two people of the three people present saying that gun never got pointed. And so again, I'm struggling with moving forward with that. That said, what I see is somebody who is very quick to, show how cool I am as a cop to my kids. Hey, I'm gonna pull I pulled my gun out off duty exactly 0 times in my career, right? To have it happen 2 times in a short period of thing is what? Your job when you are off duty is to extricate yourself from that situation as much as you possibly can. And so what I am seeing is some serious judgment errors, and I definitely am understand why he was let go. I think I'm having a hard time believing, based on the quality of investigation that's here, that I have enough to say that even more likely than not, that each of these acts of misconduct occurred with intent. It occurred in a way that I can say that's misconduct, that's dishonesty. But it does give me an icky feeling. Hey, I am seeing poor judgment. I am seeing bad decision making. I am seeing you putting yourself in situations you shouldn't be putting yourself in. So that's my comments. I don't know where I land on that, other than I'm not feeling super confident about moving beyond that.
Alex Gardner for the record. I agree. I think I agree with everything Zach just said, and that's one of the reasons I have so much heartburn over this one. It sort of felt like I had sort of the devil advocate on one shoulder and the angel advocate on the other for the whole time I was reading through this. My memory is that when the bus drivers were interviewed, at least one of them thought it was dangerous or reckless behavior and excessive speed, and then others thought, one or more thought not. And then I found myself arguing on behalf of Officer Dominique, thinking, well, bus drivers aren't used to the speeds we go. And I made a note in the margin to say, I don't know anything about the circumstances of the particular area, how open it is, what the visibility was, over what distance, and so on. I found myself trying to put myself in his shoes for much of this. It's just that I also get on the other side of the fence and I ask myself, what are the odds that all of these things, I could be the officer and victimized by all of these odd circumstances coming together in this short period of time? And how much of that can I attribute to the X? And the answer is not a lot. I mean, she sends up the flare and draws the attention, but she's not responsible for what all these witnesses are saying. And then, his representation to DPSST in its most favorable light is somewhat misleading, right? It's not like the smoke cleared after the investigation and they decided there was no misconduct here. I mean, at the very least, it wasn't completely forthcoming.
And so what's the misconduct?
Exactly.
So
that's the struggle.
I think there was excessive speeds. I think that's clear. I think that the 100 is just a number that probably wasn't reached. And is every time a cop drives their car in an unsafe manner, we're going to start reviewing those cases? I think we're going to have 4 or 5 committees, right? And we're going to meet weekly or monthly, or traffic violations are not something that fall under our purview, right? And I think the likelihood there was a traffic violation committed, probably pretty high, probably really high.
And Captain Calhoun, for the record, I too, very convoluted, had to read this a couple times. Again, he's not denying that he didn't speed. It's just, was he willing to say, I'm going with the app and it's 100? Don't feel comfortable doing that. So yeah, you probably have a violation of whether or not he drove prudently. Was it, we do see leapfrogging when you're escorting at a safe manner, and if this was excessive. So you have probably those violations, but I don't have clear and convincing untruthfulness. I know, I've been interviews in many when you want cell phone records to be the sole, the third party, the independent document that can either refute or support somebody. It wasn't there. I understand why they're just saying, okay, it's your recollection that you thought you did, you went through the motions, it doesn't prove it. So is there a violation of, failure to follow the policy to notify? You have that. Is it clear and convincing?
because they don't have proof that he actually lied like he should have remembered. So I'm all at, there's violations of their department policies, but I can't get clear and convincing on the untruthfulness. And the department in their official form said that their official investigation determined Officer Dominy's conduct both on and off duty may have violated numerous, but then they settled it. They either didn't finish the investigation with what they had and could determine it, which is what you always try and do. They left it as may and left it for the rest of us to interpret what those findings would have been.
So the bus driver who said, yeah, he was unsafe, what she said was, by no means was Dominy safe, but he was probably going around 55 or 60. Even the bus driver posturing against him doesn't put it near at 100.
Mark, just to clarify one thing, and I don't think we're going to get any place on this speeding thing anyway. The only, I think, as far as I know, and from what I see, the only thing that ties this alleged 100 miles an hour to passing the buses is what he said in his text. It could have been a mile down the road. The thing that I think really bothers me about that is the Sun says top speed 100 miles an hour, going a little fast, I see, and he says sometimes being a cop can be fun. He doesn't deny it. He kind of brags about it. Again, is that proof? Well, no, it doesn't. But and then he says, I needed to pass a couple of school buses. That's, I think, is the only place the school bus thing comes in. We don't even know if that's where it happened.
This is John T again. I would imagine if he had have known that we're going to be looking over the shoulder at their communications on Life 360, he would have said, I wasn't doing 100. But we're getting a peek at these private communications. And again, I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying we don't have proof that he did.
I'm inclined to agree.
This is Mark Gerton. Clarification, Polk County, the Sheriff's Office did not investigate that at all, never asked to do anything like that. It went to the DA's office, so we had nothing to do with that. The school bus, I don't think the speeding should be an issue that this board deals with. That is policy, that is internal within that agency. All the other stuff, to me, it's like all these things are said, but also countered, and there's literally nothing that I can say that this is like the smoking gun per se. That doesn't work, but in the smoking gun, on one other hand, when the firearm was out and the light was shining on the side of the room, he had his flashlight in one hand and a gun in the other. Someone is reasonably thinking that might be a pistol if it's dark. I mean, so there's all these things that don't amount to a lot, but it amounts to just a weird coincidence, but a weird chain of events that should have been looked at a little differently and thoroughly in that manner. So.
Alex Gardner, for the record, I agree with that too, and this is the part of the struggle. But on page 4 of 7, his statement to DPSST says the investigation revealed both incidents were unfounded. And I'm just going to ask the group: is that an accurate way to characterize what the agency found? If the agency says there may be a violation, is that in any stretch or any fair interpretation unfounded? To me, unfounded is saying the agency looked at this and there's no substance to it. And that is very different from the agency going, something smells, but we can't carry our burden of proof.
So, Zach Kenny, I am going to say that if I take that in the charitable light, again, I don't know that Mr. Dominy read the conclusions of the investigation. Like, in his mind, the investigation revealed that it was unfounded, right? I mean, like, they collect all these facts and that there is, like, that it's unfounded. I believe that is a little bit misleading. But I also am reading through here where, like, even the city itself doesn't seem to think that the speeding probably was where it needed to be. You know, they seem to look at it in a charitable light. When I look at the, he pointed a gun at me, domestic situation. I think there's a statement in there about pointing the gun with both hands. Well, how do you hold the flashlight and point the gun with both hands? So there's an inconsistency in that witness's statement, right? And I'm going to also take this in context is I think we focused on like the fact that it's an ex-spouse that's reporting this, but it's also like this is during the time of the divorce, right? And I think that like, we all know that we've known people who've been in the middle of a relationship ending, and there is a pattern of poor decision making and other things that like your life, your recollection isn't always as clear. And I think that probably had to have played into this at some point. And I think, I guess I'm just at the point where I don't know that I can get like beyond a preponderance of the evidence or clear and convincing evidence that were there. But I 100% agree, Alex, like the whole in totality, like I don't like it. Like, no. And would I hire, this person? Probably not. Probably not. Do I think they probably should have gotten, separated? I think they had a case to do that. I just don't know that this reaches where I would do board action. And I would support adopting the staff record because I think that it's got the best available information we're going to get on this.
James Clevenger, for the record. The problem I have is that I kind of do find dishonesty in the multiple assertions that he called his supervisors after that EB incident. I mean, I know that he eventually agreed that he was wrong and didn't make those calls, but that was only after the phone records were discovered, and it's kind of hard to argue against those. But I just don't think that's something you would forget, regardless of what you're going through in your personal life. That's a hard phone call to make to your supervisors about law enforcement contact. It's just something that I don't think you would forget. And that's where I'm leaning in seeing that there was some dishonesty.
Yeah, this is John Teague. I thought that too initially. What mitigated that for me, and this may have been presented as some mitigation during his interview process during the IA, but was apparently he has to call his supervisors all the time for things that happen off duty, with his son causing problems and getting involved in things. So it's just another one of those things. For you and I, it would be a one-off. It'd be pretty hard to forget that I did or didn't call. But if I've got a dozen or dozens of these kind of things, that's where I thought maybe he actually forgot.
Yeah, and I think the interview was 7 months after the incident or something, and so that had this happened a week after the incident, I think yes, I'd have serious issues. But 7 months, you asked me what I did 7 months ago, and like I'm going to default to what I, probably what I think what I know should have been done, and what I think I probably would do most of the time, because I'm not going to have an independent recollection of that.
This is what I think as a chief of police. It's interesting you mentioned this constellation of events. When I see these kind of things coming together, and thank goodness it's been very rare with my guys. When I see this kind of stuff coming together, I worry about their ability to police justly. Life is too fraught with problems for them to make wise decisions on the street. I think it's good that Mr. Dominy is taking a break from the profession. Maybe he can come back into it later, but for the moment, he needs to get things squared away so that he can make right decisions and just decisions. I understand why Levin decided to separate him. I understand. I don't believe that it rises to the level of board action. I think it's just a bad confluence of events, and he's very fortunate that at least I don't believe we should take board action.
Barrett, for the record, I have a hard time giving a full-on pass for anybody that's going through substantial life changes such as a divorce, especially in our profession. Over half of us have done it. And I have never been involved in an incident during my divorce where I was inclined to pull out my firearm not once but twice. It's common, yes, that we get overwhelmed, maybe we miss some small things, I forget to submit a report, or I forget to show up to court. But these are two sizable events that happened, yes, at a certain point in his life when things were definitely rocky. I agree that the investigation might not have been great. I still have substantial concerns with this. I'm glad that he is not in the profession. I don't believe he should be. And I am leaning towards taking board action. It might be small, but I believe that that's within our purview. You asked what was the misconduct. He was arrested for crimes. Just because the DA's office chose not to file them does not mean that they did not occur.
This is Mark Roush. I want to clarify something I said earlier, and you kind of clarified, Mark. I referred to his mitigation letter or document in the report says that it's pertinent to note that Polk County Sheriff's Office did not file formal charges, and you're confirming that is correct. What I was, that got me confused, but what I was referring to, and there was no conviction stemmed from this incident. It was Lynn County, of course, that investigated. They did arrest and jail him, and I kind of conflated the two as I was going back and forth. So anyway, just want to make that clarification. But I'm also, in looking at this in the totality, really struggling just giving it a pass. I mean, there's a lot that went on here. And one other kind of detail, I think, clearly the witness in the gun incident, the domestic incident, was not being truthful. I mean, that just jumps out at you when he says he had two hands on the pistol and had a flashlight. But I believe Mr. Dominy also said that, and this was off-duty personal vehicle, he got out when the guy kept approaching him. He got out, got in the back seat, got his flashlight and his gun, and never stepped out, never got out where the guy could see his gun. And the guy said he pointed it at him. I think you're probably right. That was incorrect, but I think he showed it to him.
And my point is just, if he looks like he's probably got a gun and his body language says he's got a gun, and then there's a flashlight that comes up and there's an object, he may never have pointed that gun. The guy may have never actually seen the gun, but there's probably enough to infer. I mean, like, I know when somebody's got a gun, whether I see the gun or not, right?
Well,
because I watch body language and I can see the way they carry their body and the way the weight is shifted and the way they've gone up on the balls of their feet. And so, like, I think it's entirely possible, but both of that he perceived the gun was pointed at him, and that Officer Dominy never actually pointed a gun and believed he held it in a place where it was not in view. Not in view. I think those are completely, they're not mutually exclusive at all. I think those are.
Alex Gardner, for the record, the piece that I've mentioned a couple of times where he's got the written record and he's made a written assertion is the single thing that I get stuck on. Because I believe in the context of making his separation decision, he had access to the material. And so I have a hard time allowing as how he might have misunderstood his circumstance or the way the department viewed these facts. I'll say that, though, on his behalf, that I remember a discipline situation a long time ago where the incident sort of turned on whether the officer actually got the warrant confirmation at the time that he did, that he said he did. And the consensus among cops at the table was, look, you remember when you get a warrant confirmation where it is in the series of events. And at the time, I was thinking that was the case. And since then, I've had situations where I thought I had the warrant confirmation and the timing was not right. And it's just when we're overwhelmed, our memories fail from time to time. And when you're going through, a person is going through a domestic dissolution like this and fatigued and under duress, memory doesn't function as well. So I cut him a lot of slack everywhere except for the moment where he's making his representation to the academy. And you can maybe the group can maybe straighten me out on this. I'm not intransigent. I'm just stuck on it for the moment. Because at this time, he's sort of turning the page in his career and he's making a new representation on a new career. I just don't see how he gets there, but.
So, this is John T. When I read that, I didn't fixate on it like you did. I assumed that it was just a rather ham-handed dismissal of the agency's conclusions. Yeah, they think they founded them, but they're not. They're unsubstantiated. And I would have chosen different words. I don't find any dishonesty here. Certainly not any actionable dishonesty. I'm still curious for some further discussion about D's contention or suggestion that there is some misconduct that's actionable. Is she alone in thinking that?
She's not alone in her concerns, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm so conflicted. I can't make that decision. I can't land there. So he's getting, from me, he's getting the benefit of the doubt, even though it tastes bad intellectually and viscerally.
Barrett, for the record, may I ask an administrative question? What does a decertification and his police certification look like and translate to his, I'm assuming private security is what he's going towards? Are they completely separate or are they?
Susie Herring, for the record, yes. So they will look at it based upon their moral fitness standards, which are different from ours.
So is he being dual investigated here with police and then also with his private security?
Yep.
That can I make a motion? We at least adopt the record so we can move forward on that part.
Barrett, I'll second.
Further discussion on the record? Okay, go ahead, Eric.
All right, we are voting on a motion to adopt the staff report. Chair Teague.
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett.
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg.
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger.
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner.
Aye.
Committee Member Garten.
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny.
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine.
Aye.
Committee Member Rauch.
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan.
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle.
Aye.
Motion passed.
So back to Dee's question. So if he's decertified as a cop, he can still get certification as private security?
May. Yeah, it's still reviewed by that program. They have different moral fitness standards.
That was your question, right?
It was. And has he already been hired in private security? Did somebody read and confirm that?
He has. He's working on a temporary work at right now.
An agency has done an investigation and has said that we're okay moving forward.
I can't guarantee that the business did an investigation, but they've put him through training and he's working on a temporary work permit for now.
Well, Alex Gardner, for the record, I move that the board take no action because I can't reach the level of proof.
Mark Rauch, one more comment about you. You've asked several times, Chief Teague, about what is the misconduct or where is the misconduct, and we haven't really talked about too much about the incident where he was arrested, referred to as the barn incident, and I'm reminded in looking back at this, the DA's letter where he said he was not going to prosecute because he couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But he does say, while there's clearly conduct involving firearms that should not be condoned, and I believe he had probable cause to make the arrest, I do not believe the state could prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Of course, reasonable doubt is not our standard. Looking at clear and convincing. The DA almost seems to be saying there that in his opinion, there was misconduct and there's probable cause for being arrested for disorderly conduct and whatever the other charges were, and being taken to jail.
Mark, I'm just saying, I think that's like boilerplate language. And the DA is doing the agency a solid by saying, like, I don't think this was an illegal arrest, but it's definitely not prosecutable. So like that's every case rejection letter ever for every arrest that doesn't get prosecuted, which is like in my county, 95% of the arrests.
So let me, Mark Rouch again, let me ask the question this way. Do you think, are you saying that you do not think there was misconduct associated with that, given that all the circumstances that were reported by the Lynn County Sheriff's Office and what they saw?
So I think there was serious poor decision making. I think that he had multiple chances to extricate him from the situation, which I think, quite frankly, if he was an employee, termination would be on the table for that. I think the problem I have with is I can't definitively say that he pointed a firearm at somebody unlawfully. Did he, would he be able to articulate that he felt some sort of threat and felt the need to draw a firearm? That standard's pretty low legally to be able to say that I felt a threat where I needed to draw a firearm, particularly on your own property, right? Do I think it's the best course of action? Absolutely not. But I wasn't there, and I have to give that the credence that the law allows people defending their own property to have in their own person. And so I can see if had I shown up on this call, I can see that you have two firearms you don't want going back into the possession of the two people involved. You have two people who are being very unreasonable and easily agitated that evening. Like one of them's intoxicated. Like jail is a very good solution to solve getting those firearms out of the mix, getting those people away from each other for that evening. This situation probably could have just as easily been resolved had those people been reasonable and been reasonably sure it would have been a safe outcome for later in that evening. That you're not going to probably press charges on you because you're going to be pressing charges. Like they're victims of each other, and that's not a prosecutable case. And so I can see this case going either way, quite frankly, with the responding police officer, like, hey, this isn't going to be a prosecutable case. I'm not making an arrest, or I need to resolve the situation tonight until temper's cool and the firearms removed from the situation and that arrest gets made. But I think it's reading a little too much into it, just from my experience, to see that a rejection letter from the DA's office says, hey, you had probable cause for the arrest, but I don't have enough to prosecute. Like that's all the time that, through our career that we see that. I mean, maybe some counties they prosecute like every arrest, but like that's not the county I worked in.
I think I'll just say, again, Mark Rouch, I really appreciate all the comments and perspectives on this because this was a challenging one.
With regard to that specific incident, you'll recall that you already had this conversation, don't touch my stuff. He gets home, his trailer's moved, tires are slashed. He goes in and confronts these guys, probably aggressively. He's angry. You get into an altercation. One guy has a pistol. He ends up pulling his pistol. The other guy who pulled his pistol never even saw his pistol, so he wasn't that threatening with it. He just took a defensive posture with it. He got too emotionally involved in that, but I understand why he got emotionally involved in it. And I just don't think it arises to board action. I don't like it at all. And as an agency head, I would have dealt with it very strongly. It would have really bothered me that I had a cop out there that responded that way to that kind of incident. But I don't think it arises to board action.
I would second Alex's thing if it's still on the table.
Okay. Any further discussion? D? Okay, Eric.
All right. We are voting on a motion to take no action. Chair Teague?
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett?
I don't like it, but aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg?
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger?
Nay.
Committee Member Gardner?
Aye.
Committee Member Garten?
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny?
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine?
Aye.
Committee Member Roush?
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan?
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, we're on to Ashley Dalton. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Chair Chief, can you take 5?
Yeah, you know what, we should. Yeah, we go get her.
No.
Give us till noon, get some lunch and stuff. We'll take a break until noon. I'll give you that one. Dalton, who we have here? Man, actually Dalton, thank you. Go ahead.
DPSST is presenting Ashley Dalton's separation from her employment with the Lake Oswego Police Department for the committee's review. Officer Dalton's resignation came during an investigation into allegations that she made disparaging comments against another officer and supervisors at the Lake Oswego Police Department. In reviewing the documentation provided, the department identified areas of moral fitness violations in the category of dishonesty, in that Dalton intentionally made false statements about another officer with the Lake Oswego Police Department, and for misconduct, that Dalton threatened to harm the reputation of an officer with the Lake Oswego Police Department by intentionally making disparaging comments and false statements about the officer, and that Dalton's comments about the officer to employees at the Lake Oswego Police Department created an inefficient operation for the agency. Excuse me, for the agency, Mr. Chair.
Okay. If Dalton will have 5 minutes to provide some mitigation, we won't be asking any questions. Melissa will be timing you and she'll give you some notice when your time is almost up. And we'll start on you.
Good morning, members of the Police Policy Committee, and thank you for taking the time to consider my thoughts and perspective on this matter before finalizing the staff report. I recognize how important it is to maintain high moral and ethical standards in our profession and to have a system of checks and balances. I'll start by introducing myself and briefly describing my qualifications so you know a little bit about who I am. My name is Ashley Dalton and I'm 26 years old. I'm currently a police officer with the Milwaukee Police Department. This is a position I cherish and place tremendous amount of value in. I submitted a written statement and trust you all have had a chance to review and consider it, so some of this will be a brief review and summary. I'm here today in person to demonstrate just how much this means to me. I graduated from Estacada Early College in 2014 with my high school diploma as well as college credits. I then graduated from Clackamas Community College in 2015 with an associate's degree in general studies. Finally, I graduated from Portland State University with a bachelor's degree in criminology and criminal justice in June of 2017, just 3 years after graduating from high school. I served as an intern for the Lake Oswego Police Department while I was attending Portland State University. I also worked throughout the time I was going to college. In October of 2018, I became a reserve deputy sheriff with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. During my time as a reserve, I also worked as a legal assistant for a law firm. In July of 2019, I became a police officer with the Lake Oswego Police Department. As you are aware, I resigned from the Lake Oswego Police Department on May 13th, 2021, during the course of an investigation into allegations that I made disparaging comments against another officer and supervisors at the Lake Oswego Police Department. In December of 2021, after a thorough background investigation and psychological evaluation, I was hired with the Milwaukee Police Department. Since being with Milwaukee Police Department, I successfully completed the field training and evaluation program, and I'm now a solo officer on the road. I love my job and I love this profession. As I understand it, DPSST and the Police Policy Review Committee are considering whether I intentionally made false statements about another officer with the Lake Oswego Police Department. According to your letter, dishonesty is intentional conduct, which can include untruthfulness, dishonesty by admission or omission, deception, misrepresentation, falsification, or reckless disregard for the truth. The text messages, which are the focus of this review, were statements of my honest opinions at the time and were based on conversations, observations, and experiences I had with the other employee I spoke about. I did not spend much time considering the potential implications of those text messages at the time because they were from me to one other person and I didn't intend or expect they would become much more significant than a casual comment of opinion. I made mistakes and I would handle things differently if I had to do it over again. I paid a significant price and I have learned some hard lessons. I know lessons like these are a critical part of learning, growing, developing empathy, and developing wisdom. I acknowledge I made mistakes. and there were better ways to handle the situation. I definitely was not intentionally being dishonest. I don't believe the mistakes I made should result in revocation or suspension of my police certification. Revocation or suspension would drastically alter my life. I consistently dedicated the last 8 years of my life to being a valuable part of this profession. The second chance I have been given at the Milwaukee Police Department is invaluable to me. I would ask the board and the Police Policy Review Committee for your trust and support as I start over with the Milwaukee Police Department, and I am confident I will not let you guys or my agency down. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Barrett, for the record, I think this is the second Lake Oswego case that we've heard last year surrounding similar conduct. And it's apparent that there's a culture at Lake Oswego that they are now aware of and trying to fix. Do I believe that the things that happened, the text messages that were sent, conversation that was had, relationships on and off duty is something that the board should, or that the group should recommend action on? I do not. I see this as some poor choices, some definitely maturity issues. To her own verbal statement, she's 26 years old, and when these likely happened, she might have been 23, 24. I think that there's a lot of growing to be done in the very first couple of years of your career, and having going through this at such a young age in your career, I don't think that this is likely to repeat itself due to the process that she's going through right now. So my opinion would be not to take action moving forward unless somebody has something that I'm missing.
I think I'll find for the record, it was not lost on me either that this is the second one like Oswego. I too was concerned about the culture and what is being perpetuated there. So much so that, you know, I take great stock in Chief Straight's assessment of this individual and giving her a chance to succeed somewhere else. And it sounds like by all accounts you've done so. I do believe, you know, we're right in the misconduct being presented to us. However, I don't believe it rises to the level of that.
Zach Cave, looking at the staff report, I would say that this is another one where I kind of take issue with what's on the staff report. It's intentionally made false statements about another officer with the LMPD. Like, when we have private conversations with people in our lives, we are not preparing a document that's going to be presented in court, right? And it's going to not always be 100% accurate. It's not always going to contain all of the exculpatory information or potential other interpretations of the information. Just for expediency's sake, we're going to say things that are 80% accurate or 90% accurate. I just realized a little while ago, I said, the county I live in, like 95% of the arrests don't get prosecuted. You know, right, I want to put this on the record and take it back. I don't know that it's 95%. It feels like 95%. Based on my own sample size, it's probably somewhere close to that. But it could be 96%. It could be 88%. Like, I don't know, right? But I think everybody here knew what I meant by that, right? And for us to assign that as dishonesty, I think we're doing a disservice to the word dishonesty, right? We're watering down that definition so that when we need to draw that bright line and where our standards are, that it's fuzzy and we can't make that. And so we need to be very careful about assigning intent and dishonest behavior to something like that that is normal conversational habits of the general public, and to include police officers. As far as the misconduct, yeah, absolutely. Like the conduct from an HR standpoint, it's not okay. It's not copacetic. And I agree. I think, you know, being in your early 20s, I mean, I can't imagine had I been in my early 20s and been held to the standards of being a police officer with regard to just being careful about how I said things, way I worded things, and what I said and did. And so I guess, yeah, I'm leaning toward no board action, but I don't know if we can make I just don't feel like there's an intentionally made false statements. Like, I think that on the record is an inaccurate statement, and I don't know that I can support adopting the record as written. So I would propose that when we do adopt staff record, we do it with an amendment.
Barrett, I would agree with that. Making disparaging and false comments maybe leaving disparaging in there and taking out the word false?
Yeah.
We're just taking out intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll entertain your motion, but I want to say again, for Melissa, you're doing a good job.
Oh, I'm not taking offense, you're good.
Mark Rauch for the record, and I'm getting the same, I'm going the same, leading the same direction as the what I'm hearing, but I think I have a little bit different take on staff's perception and the whole perception of dishonesty and dismissing this as not a dishonest statement. It's the text that she sent to a fellow employee about another employee. The part that really bothers me is where she says, everyone knew that Dr. Corey wanted to Brady her. Now, you all know I'm not in law enforcement, but I know what Brady is. And the psychologist that she apparently, the interview she was apparently going through for Camus, from what we have in the record, which is all we're aware of and all we can be aware of, it sounds like he warned her. She was in a situation where she was struggling with something, with some answer she was giving. And it seems pretty clear to me that this interviewer, Dr. Corey, gave her a warning that something like, now I got to warn you, you look like you're struggling here. If you don't tell the truth, it could have Brady implications, or it could, and I got a sense that that's not that uncommon. That wouldn't be that uncommon in that situation. But she didn't say, what's her name, was given a Brady warning. Even that would have been out of bounds. I mean, from a misconduct standpoint, but from a dishonesty standpoint, she didn't say that. She said Dr. Corey wanted to Brady her. That's considerably different to me, and I think that is dishonesty. And in her mitigation letter, she just kind of dismisses that and says, "Well, it was just my opinion of what I heard." So anyway, I'm not leaning towards taking action. That's wanted to make clear that that's my reaction to that statement.
Good, Mark.
This marker, unless I'm missing something, district attorneys are the ones that designate, whether someone can Brady somebody or not. And I don't know of a case where I've been told from our psychologist during those interviews that it's not up to them. They're kind of the fact finders. Does that make sense? So her saying that she wanted to Brady her, that's not her decision to make.
Yeah, I think, notwithstanding that, the misconduct is she inadvertently, maybe vertently, blew up the agency by making this comment, dragging Brady into it. Angela, you had your hand up?
I do, Sheriff Brandenburg for the record. So in the letter of support from Chief Strait on its DPSST's Exhibit A7, so he notes that they did a thorough background and that they reviewed LOPD's internal affairs investigation. So they also did follow-up interviews, and then they explained that they concluded the statements were not dishonest. So, and this is an agency that's taking her on as an officer, so I think that we should consider that as well.
All right. So do you still want to make amendments to the record?
I mean, I feel that like having this go forward, showing that Ms. Dalton intentionally made false statements about another officer. I think she just wasn't being careful with how she worded things or what she said, or whether there was veracity to what she'd heard in the rumor mill. And I think that, I think that's a lesson that we probably all learned earlier in life. Some of us, take longer, some of us, but it's not uncommon for someone in their early 20s to not have quite learned the lesson yet, that just because you heard something doesn't mean it's accurate, and that by you perpetuating that and bringing it forward again, that you are making a false statement. I would argue that she's probably learned the lesson at this point. So I think that, I would adopt it, but I would say that if we take the intentionally out, I think that's.
Before you make your motion, let me say this. I don't think most of y'all know that if you read the second paragraph, the department determined that. We have spent a lot of time talking about what that word should be. Determined sounds determinative, and that really isn't what has happened. But we've struggled to figure out what the word should be to reflect the department's analysis. So determined may make it sound stronger and more definitive than it really is. We may need to revisit that some more.
Marcia Moore, for the record, when we went back and looked at this, we pulled one specifically in rule. And so there's a spot where it says the department determines, and then there's a spot where it says identify. And so we put those in the proper places. So it would be a bigger discussion with the rule and everything.
Alex Gardner, for the record, it seems like what the department is determining is that there may be a violation and it's being submitted to this body, right? If may was inserted there, it would sort of fix it.
Yeah, bravo.
Well, Marcia, for the record, we'll have to look at rule because we don't want to go because there's not a may, I don't believe, in there. And so what we're looking at is there any little, just the tiniest nugget of moral fitness? And so, we could definitely see if we can find an adverb in there that kind of softens it, like the may, or a tiny nugget. I don't know how to say that, but
Tiny nugget is may, right? You're not exclusively finding, you're finding a basis for inquiry.
Well, it says that we're either going to affirm, like you said, affirm, modify, or negate. And I would argue that our duty right now is not to affirm or to negate, but it is to modify. And so that's what I was proposing.
Well, go ahead and make your motion then.
Motion that we adopt the staff record with the modification. We're removing intentionally from the dishonesty portion of the discretionary review.
About misconduct, second line.
Should you say threaten to harm the reputation of an officer? Yeah, then the intentionally making disparaging and false comments.
Okay,
take the intentional out of both of those.
I lean toward Mark in this, but I'll still vote aye on the motion.
So, Mark Rouch for the record, so the record would then say, the record that you're proposing, we modify it to, would say, under dishonesty, Dalton made false statements about another officer.
Correct, and then the misconduct would say Dalton threatened to harm the reputation of an officer with the LOPD by making disparaging and false comments about the officer. I think that occurred. I just doubt whether there was really an intentional or knowing aspect to that.
Yes. Mark Rouch for the record, if staff is happy with that, I'll second that motion.
John T., I think it's debatable whether it was intentional or not, but I will vote aye for the motion. Any further discussion? Okay.
All right, we are voting on a motion to adopt the staff report with the proposed amendments. So Chair Teague.
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett.
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg.
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger.
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner.
Aye.
Committee Member Garten.
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny.
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine.
Aye.
Committee Member Roush.
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan.
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, need some discussion or a motion. Board action, no board action.
For the record, I think that we've discussed it well enough that I will propose that we take no action.
We have a motion to recommend no action. We have a second.
Captain McAlpine, second.
Any further discussion? Here.
We are voting on a motion to take no action. Chair Teague.
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett.
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg.
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger.
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner.
Aye.
Committee Member Garten.
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny.
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine.
Aye.
Committee Member Rauch,
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan,
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, you were done, thank you.
Thank you guys.
We're on to Michael Schaaf.
It's on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it to like.
When we started the meeting, Officer Schaaf was on the phone.
Doesn't look like it.
Just make sure
He
you.
left a long time ago from the
Several hours.
lineup. Yeah.
He's gonna get mitigation.
So he emailed and said that he had a family emergency come up and won't be able to speak, but asked that I email him the decision of the board.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa. Present it to us.
Melissa Lane Gotcho for the record. The department is presenting for committee review Michael Schaaf and his resignation in lieu of termination from probationary employment with the Burns Police Department. Officer Schaaf resigned following an internal investigation into his untruthfulness about the mayor of the city of Burns calling him. The department identified in the information that was provided moral fitness violations in the category of dishonesty. The department identified that Schaaf was untruthful about the mayor calling him, and that Officer Schaaf was untruthful about contacting dispatch to obtain the mayor's wife's phone number. Mr. Chair.
Okay, once again, some discussion towards adopting the record. Well, it's John Teague, I'll start. I think this who called who first is an obfuscation, hiding this whole thing with the mayor or city manager and a council member trying to get public records changed to convenience a council member. I find it remarkable.
That Kenny, I think if we could refer to this to the city manager and city council police or policy committee, then I would do that rather than do this. But I think it was reading it the whole time. I was kind of wondering, like, what is this that we're talking? Like, what's at the heart of this? There's a lot of pronouns being used rather than just saying what it is. Like it's things, it, that, but there's never just stating what the thing with the actual subject of this whole issue was until you read the mitigation letter and you're like, oh, this is about misconduct by a city manager and a city council member and the attempt to cover it up. And then this officer, who's a probationary officer. Again, I want to go back to the probationary police officer. My expectations of your ability to navigate some of these tricky situations when you are a brand new police officer is not very high. Right?
Like an agency. It's a second agency.
Second agency, but the other one was like not even a year, right? It was like a couple months, right? So you're a brand new police officer. So I mean, I don't really quite understand why this is in front of us again.
For the record, a brand new officer not only learning the job, but now stuck in the middle of politics is a crappy place to be. I don't even know that I fully understood the politics within my city government until 7 to 8 years into it when I'm working in community relations. So I wrote down several notes. It was world class investigation, appeared to be a problem between the city, police and politics. Due to the size of the area, many people wearing different hats, professional boundaries were harder to understand. Did he lie about who called who first? Maybe. But even so, like, after we're hanging this investigation on, I'm inclined to take no action on this.
Yeah, I accept he probably did. I'll say lie. Probably did lie about it. Probably because he didn't want to be the whistleblower going to the mayor. It's more convenient to say the mayor called me and I arrived there talking about something else and this came up. It's a really untenable situation to be in. Certainly it's not actionable. I don't even find misconduct.
Their staff is saying that they found dishonesty though. So I don't see that they don't find misconduct or misuse. It's dishonesty that.
And as a union rep, like I don't quite understand that. Don't share your records. Well, first off, the fact that he's not willing to share his records is not proof of dishonesty. Like it's up to you to prove the lie, not for him to prove he was telling the truth. Like that is the onus there, and that kind of bothered me too. It's like, well, if you don't produce all this information that I have no legal right to ask you for, then I'm going to burn you at the stake. Like that is problematic. The whole thing was very, I don't know. This put a kind of, it was distasteful. I have never complained about what was like how things were characterized in the staff report to this meeting, but it seems to become the theme this time. But the fact that this is characterized as being untruthful, like I just don't even see enough to show that there was a truthfulness issue, because I think, again, I mean, he seems to be making kind of a good faith effort to show his, the idea that there was a 647 number, and then he can't find a 647 number. Like, is he conflating two different things? Was it on a different phone? The definitive proof from the mayor's standpoint is that the mayor showed his call log on his phone, which doesn't mean anything because you can change that all you want all day long. So, like, where, if the city of Burns is super concerned about this, where is all that documentation? What you have is an essay with no footnotes or bibliography. And
Mark Grouch for the record, and I'm inclined to agree that this is just it's a confusing mess and it's politics and it's not actionable. But to that point, Zach, I do lean towards finding unactionable dishonesty. And my thought process there is that it seems to me from this, excuse me, very confusing record, because we don't know what's in the background. But it seems to me like they've brought forward evidence that you did or didn't make the call first, whatever the case was, and he just says, "Well, I have records, right?" I think first he said, "I can't find my records." And he says, "I have, but you don't have any. I'm not going to show them to you because I don't have to." I mean, they did produce records that seemed to be evidence or seemed to show that what he was saying was not true. Gave him an opportunity to give his side of the story, and he says, "I'm not going to do it because I don't have to."
Yeah, and I guess I looked at that, the way that played out. It seemed like he wanted to, he was advised, but he had poor union representation is what I saw. Like, it was like hiring a crappy attorney. And that union rep was like, you're right, you're not allowed to demand that. But in the totality of circumstances, maybe that's not the hill you decide to die on.
Well, I think what happened is he said he received a call from this number and he didn't. And by proving the record, it's going to play into their hand that he's being dishonest. They're going to terminate him. In fact, again, it's what's lost is the greater sin.
Yeah.
But frankly, there's sometimes, I'll just say this, there's sometimes dishonesty can even be commendable, much less innocuous. In this case, I think it's innocuous.
Well, Mark Grouch, that's totally my feeling on this is, to say as it's written in stone that dishonesty is always a mortal sin. It's always something that's, and sometimes there's different shades and there has to be different circumstances. And, I've struggled as long as I've been on this committee with this whole dishonesty thing. I'm sort of painting it as a one size fits all thing. There's dishonesty. You lie to your chief about something significant to your job, yeah, that's one thing. But there's, it seems like we look at dishonesty, even if it was before you were an officer, if you were off duty, if you were talking to your neighbor, whatever, it's defined that broadly. Maybe that's something to be looked at in the future. I don't know. But anyway, I don't want to drag it out, but I'm inclined to agree. Even though this was job related, he was in an impossible situation. But still, technically, for the reason I have a hard time saying it, wasn't dishonesty because he ignored the opportunity to prove that it wasn't or to show any evidence that it wasn't. And there was evidence that it was technically dishonest. What we do with that, I don't know.
Captain McAlpine, for the record, this is one of the ones where we see in our career, just tell the truth. I mean, when you deceive or not forthcoming on the most innocuous things, which it always consistently floors me when people just, don't. I feel like that's what happened. Did you call or did you not call? Simple question, yes or no. And there are witnesses and everybody else that says, yeah, he called me, I didn't call him. And they show their records and the officer's going, I'm not showing you my records, but I didn't call. And then you're left with this. You have all the other drama of, the politics and, why he didn't just say, yeah, I felt I was torn in too many different, and I felt I had to answer to a city manager or to a mayor or this or that, and then just say, this is what I did. But when asked and answered, it was, no, I didn't, and no, I'm not producing records. So what you're left with is, were you not forthcoming in this interview, or and in fact, did you lie? He said never flies, but you do have a couple other people present that kind of affirm, and also what the records say. So I think I see why it's in front of us, whether or not in action, still listening, but I definitely don't question why it's in front of us.
I think you're right. Aesop could craft a fable around this. For future generations.
Mark, will you make a motion to adopt the record?
So motion to adopt the record?
I'll second.
And a second. Any further discussion about the record? Eric?
All right, we are voting on a motion to adopt the staff report. Chair Teague?
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett?
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg?
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger?
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner?
Aye.
Committee Member Garten?
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny?
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine?
Aye.
Committee Member Roush?
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan?
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, we need discussion or a motion whether or not to recommend forward action.
Mark Roush, go ahead and make a motion to take no board action.
Second. There's a motion and a second to recommend no board action. Have any further discussion? Chair.
Right, we are voting on a motion to take no action. Chair Teague?
Aye.
Committee Member Barrett?
Aye.
Committee Member Brandenburg?
Aye.
Committee Member Clevenger?
Aye.
Committee Member Gardner?
Aye.
Committee Member Garten?
Aye.
Committee Member Kenny?
Aye.
Committee Member McAlpine?
Aye.
Committee Member Roush?
Aye.
Committee Member Rowan?
Aye.
Committee Member Thistle?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Clean slate of no action. It's never happened before. I hope that means the cops are getting better. I thought I was getting pages when I started reading this. I'm like, there's gotta be some there. Okay, workday training update.
Just really quick, Chair and members of the committee, just reminding you that Shelby will be sending emails out regarding the required workday training. And she'll be sending you links to that. It's the harassment and IT training required by Department of Administrative Services. And deadline's the end of the year, so you've got plenty of time to do it, but Shelby's gonna be monitoring those and sending you some reminders so you don't forget to get those documents home.
So I'm in a couple different
Yeah.
committees or whatever. You want to do it one time?
Yeah, just one time.
Will the reminders be all sent to the entire group or to the people that haven't done it?
So, no, it'll be the people that haven't done it, but board members will get reminders from the executive appointments office. So if you're serving on the board, then you'll get a different email. She'll be able to remind the policy committee members.
Okay, program manager update.
Marsha Moran for the record. So a quick overview of the cases that we have. So right now we're sitting at 111 total police cases. 59 of them are ready to begin the review process and 52 are pending criminal employment matters or waiting on records to be provided to DPSST. Since the last policy committee meeting, we've received 20 new cases. 10 cases were closed since the last policy committee meeting and 4 cases were deferred. Now, deferred is the actual language that we should have been using for those individuals that were separated and not certified, not employed. So we lose jurisdiction when they aren't certified. So rule allows us to defer those cases. So we're just calling it the right thing. They're technically closed cases, but we're just using the right terminology. And then I did also want to report out the ARC cases just for information as well. There were 3 pre-employment cases that were open since the last policy committee meeting, and 2 of those were closed. The next one's coming up next week for review, just for informational. Moving on, I wanted to let you all know about a email that we received regarding the applicant review committee and a recent meeting that we had, and it's from a patrol command at Lincoln County, and they had an officer that went through that process. And he wrote to say that I truly appreciate DPSST's assistance and guidance in this matter. I listened to the meeting and we are grateful. The committee, the ARC, has the same belief we have after understanding the officer's life experiences. I also like the comments expressed by one of the members of the committee where he spoke to the officer about trauma being recognized in law enforcement officers after years of service and having and keeping his support systems operating healthy, because it won't be an easy road. To round this out, I was impressed by the board as a whole, and I think they are serving our profession and the community well as in their gatekeeper role. So that person was Zach, that they were pretty darn impressed with what he was saying. But it's an overall, I think it's an important thing for everybody to know and hear that there is appreciation out there for what this committee is doing. Staff has been reviewing Oregon Administrative Rule, and this will be quite perfect timing for me to tell you guys this. So as we've been reviewing Oregon Administrative Rule, we've come up with questions where we don't have an answer to of the intent of the rule or a policy behind it, and it has become more of a, well, that's what we were told to do, so that's what we're doing, and we don't have anything backing us. So what we've been doing is we're going back to what the rule says and then moving forward so that we have that, so that we are following the actual rule. And then things that are being identified, we're going to be bringing back to the committee as, okay, the rule says this, how do we modify it? It might go to a work group, that kind of thing, to make sure that we are following exactly what has been laid out to us by the committees and the board. An example is some of those cases that you have heard today. They meet the definition of a moral fitness violation for DPSST standard. The department has to determine that. And when we look at, yes, there's dishonesty and there's 51% proof of that. Even if it's a small white lie, we have to present it to you. So that's what we've been doing. And obviously, it'd be, if we could figure out a way to help filter those, that's going to be great as we move through with moral fitness work group that will be starting soon. Another item was arrested but charges dismissed. We had been operating under all charges. If the charge is dismissed, we close the case. That's what was told to us. And that's not necessarily best practice. And so we are now going to be looking at those police reports. And if there's enough there in the police report to show misconduct, we're going to bring that to the committee. So DV would be an example. You know, the person recants, but the victim recants, but the individual being arrested told the police exactly what happened, you know, or something along those lines. So yeah, you'll see more of these things, but this is why you're seeing them. It probably does feel like a change in what we've been doing, because it is, and we'll get all of this straightened out as we move forward.
So Marcia, just a couple of thoughts. The standard for arrest is probable cause, of course, and that's really 51%. Our standard of proof is clear and convincing.
It's 51%.
It's preponderance of the evidence. It's the preponderance of the evidence.
I thought it was a higher standard.
Yeah.
So that's not helpful.
Sorry.
Where's the delete button?
Yeah. It's at the moral fitness work group, which you'll get invited.
I mean, for presentation or for our decision-making process?
So, remind me,
my understanding is that the whole process is preponderance of the evidence. If someone asks for a hearing, it's the same level of proof at the hearing. I think they're...
Yeah, I think it is throughout the whole, because we have that discussion.
It's referred to as substantial evidence in the administrative rule, which is a preponderance of the evidence, which means 51%.
Yeah.
That's tough. I gotta say that's tough. Making lifelong career decisions on 51% doesn't feel right to me.
You still get a vote.
I think this group does a good job of having conversations around that. We had one today that definitely had 51%, but we chose not to.
And as a matter of reality,
It gives us a little bit of...
it's more subjective than that. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I thought the standard was something beyond that. So the standard that should get a case to our review should not be sufficient to carry the case to its conclusion. There should be.
Well, the two different issues. One is, did the misconduct, whatever exist, that's preponderance. Whether to take board action or not, is not the same.
Right. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that there's legislative history on most actions, all statutes, but most actions, and sometimes legislative intent isn't apparent from the law, but it is apparent usually in the discussion. Mm-hmm. So they can get that for you.
These are rules rather than legislative for the most part, and so we've looked on some of these, and we've not found anything yet with regards to that. So, we just need to create them. You know, we need to, if that's something that we want to do, or the group wants to do, I should say, and the board approves, then these will be topics that will come up at a future, most likely work group, and then we'll make it to this committee and then to the board. That process.
I understand the desire to make sure with the perception of the public that we are casting the widest net to make sure that we are reviewing and looking at everything, and that that DPSST and as a profession that we are making sure that anything that could be questionable gets looked at. I will just, my 2 cents with especially the Cromwell case earlier today, you see the stress this is causing a human being on something that all of us could objectively look at it and go like, there's no reason for us to be looking at this, right? And so I don't know where we could thread that needle. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not going to be around to help do it, but whatever work group looks at this or however this gets looked at is like, there has got to be a way where somebody is not worried about their way of making a living and their career for months at a time and agonizing over it, have that pit in their stomach over something that we all know. This is just process, right? We're just doing this to make sure that we look like we're holding everybody accountable and that we're showing that that everybody is subject to review. And so like I said, I don't have a solution to that. I don't want this to chew up human beings. We're having a hard enough time recruiting cops, and we have, this is a job that already chews up human beings. Like, let's figure out how we can make sure that people are we're recruiting good people that come and do this job, and that we can keep them without them just, causing unnecessary damage. I guess that's my soapbox on it. But
Chief T, what happened with the idea of a grand jury-like process, or Marcia, if you know?
Well, that ended up being the applicant review committee. One of the elements of that is that even that grand jury still has to review the cases at the same level we do. But it isn't like it's necessarily a time saver, it's just a different group looking at those cases. But my question to Marcia, what you've done. So you rattled off the number of cases that are out there. Are we chipping away at those, or are we getting further underwater?
We are kind of staying the same, let's just say, because the last time it was February, it was 109. So we're at 103, 111 now. So and a lot of these are cases that could come in that we will end up sending through as closures, but they take us the same amount of time to do conduct the review and everything. But
the good thing, Zach, is these cases like the Cromwell, those are fortunately few and far between. I guess is the way to phrase that.
No, and historically it's been, but I've seen kind of a creep. And as we're casting a wider net, like, I worry that there's just more and more people. I mean, there's people here, I'm like, dude, that's great that you're on the hot seat. Maybe that, like, we're not going to take your certification, but you probably should sweat it a little bit. Like, that's probably a good lesson learned. But I think there's a couple of people today that we looked at that I'm just kind of like, that's a lot of agony for somebody to go through on something that realistically if this committee is doing its job, their certification was never in question. Right. And I expect to see one or two of those, and maybe it's just because the theme this time was that we're not going to take board action on all of them, but it just kind of, that's my little like parting thoughts that, hey, I just would, it hurt to watch that kid sit up here and plead for her career on something that she shouldn't even have to plead for her career for. And that was me as a coach was going, oh my God. Like, we can't do this to a young police officer.
Maybe with regard to this grand jury thing, if there should be a body, maybe it's the ARC, where Melissa can say, I'm leaning this way because I need to, but I think I can see the end, and you can throw that to that body and have them look at it without having to come here.
Or before it comes here.
It's definitely an idea. We have to really change some rules and all that kind of stuff, because that's for pre-employment. But something to help along these ways. The whole, if they don't, so it would be kind of along the lines of, no, this body, no, that shouldn't go. And so they're making that determination of that's not a moral fitness violation. Whereas if they say, yeah, that should go, then it comes to the PPC or the CPC for that review. It's just hard to say if that's just an additional layer. Do we get them heard quicker because they're being met monthly? But then that increases that committee and the amount that they will see. And so we just have to.
I think the challenge too is, I agree, Zach, I think she had an impact on all of us. But it's also how you write it up. And so when an agency says, it's within their purview to say, you're not passing. Certainly there was enough to say 2 accidents, whatever, we've got to cut you loose. But to go further and strongly suggest that this person has no business in this profession, they put a very strong opinion on the conduct that they saw, the unforgiving of the actions, and saw that this person couldn't be repaired. And so then we're left with a neutral, fact-finding, independent. And so it starts with how the agency leads into this, that puts it in our court here to make those determinations. I think the proof is in the fact that we saw we all were in like-minded of should this even be here? But it wouldn't have been here if, you know, a chief or a sheriff didn't say, I'm so passionate about this. I think their certification, they should never be a cop ever again. And, you know, basically tube a person who never been in this profession. So as painful it is for her, at least there's a body here that allows us to, you know, to see a different side. Another chief to hire somebody and say, I just don't see the same optics. I've hired somebody who failed probation and phenomenal officer, never did me wrong, and has thrived and succeeded. So I think, you know, whether or not we can fix it because where it starts from and the tone that is set by that agency, but certainly I see the value in us looking at this from a slightly different perspective.
Like devil's advocate to your comment, it hurt my heart to see that as well, but it might also be a good thing for her to see so many people in this room, sheriffs, chiefs, you've got OSP superintendent in here rooting for her and giving her these kind of words of praise, and that might be something that is good for her to hear. Yes, stressful, I get that. I wish it could be maybe faster, but this group now has completely contradicted everything that her previous agency has made her feel. That could be a win for her. An emotional one, but it could be a win.
A lot to go through to get to that.
I know.
Okay. Agency updates?
Sure.
Done yet? Just a little. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up with regards to the cases, and as well as the discussion about the having some additional information, we are asking for additional positions for this unit. We've got what we're asking for is another case manager, like Melissa, and then an investigatory position, where ideally we will be able to fill in some of the gaps that we might have, and have that investigator go out and find information for us to potentially close that case or put it forward as a recommendation if we had that additional information ahead of time. So hopefully that will also help if we get those positions. That is
Is that in 23, 25 pot?
Yes.
So 3 years out, maybe?
Yes. We're trying all kinds of things right now too, but yeah, we are limited. Also, just a quick update that the Secretary of State audits, one of the items that they had recommended through that audit was that DPSST review field training manuals. Field training manual completion by randomly selecting and assessing a small sample of submitted field training manuals on an annual basis. So what we're going to do with that to meet that recommendation is we have the agency compliance reviews that are done. So we're spreading them out a little bit, so they're not done annually anymore because it's just taking too long to get through every single agency out there. But we will be requesting a couple specific field training manuals during that process to meet this requirement, and that'll start in July. And I think that'll meet the needs, and then we can see where we go from there. And one last thing is the maintenance suspensions for first aid CPR. We did send out notices over and over and over again for letting agencies know about that they need to have the first aid CPR certification. We started with notices of deficiency notices. No, sorry. Deficiency letters, that 1,300 deficiency letters that we were sending out across all disciplines. And we ended up actually sending out 44 notices of intent to suspend just last week, I believe. So we definitely got folks hearing it, but still there's 44 people out there. Possibly they could all no longer work for their agencies and they've just not submitted the proper paperwork. Sure yet. So with that, thank you.
Is something else?
Just one question about the numbers. Does 59 ready for review mean they're at this stage and waiting for us, or it does?
Well, it could be, right? Because we've received information. And so what could happen is we're reviewing it. We might need more information.
Gotcha.
So it's a yes, but there's a possibly not.
Okay, Brian.
Thank you, Chief Teague. Brian Hinson for the record, just real quick. The agency right now obviously is focused on the process of a new director. DAS is the entity that is running that on behalf of the governor. We did we further sent the DAS recruitment to 12 organizations like IATLS and others to help kind of spread the word on that there is an opening here at the agency. The recruitment for the director closes on June 6th. So after that, they'll go through whatever process they go through and then name a new director at some point. So the governor's office is obviously the entity that will make that announcement and make that determination. As far as the agency goes, we did add 2 additional basic police classes. H is here if anybody has any questions for him and his team.
Just a big thank you.
Yeah.
It's nice. We were heard, felt heard. So thank you. I know it was a heavy lift for you guys.
We're glad y'all have that understanding, because that's what we try to do, was meet your needs. So we're gonna keep working toward that end.
Yeah, I think with the 2 additional classes, that means that we will start a basic police class every month from February of 2022 all the way through December of 2022. And then as we come into the new biennium, or the second half of this biennium, we'll continue to assess and see where we're at. And then beyond that, just real quick, the board did approve 12 policy option packages that we're moving forward with to address issues here at the agency. Those issues primarily being an understaffing issue, a lack of technology issue. In order to accomplish what we need to do to maintain the mission of the agency, we need to increase our staff and our technological efficiencies. And so a lot of our POPs are centered around that. And hopefully we'll be successful in that. We will have a better idea of where our POPs stand as we go into our submittal of our agency requested budget, which is in July. And we'll know kind of where we're headed. We do have Ledge Days coming up, and we have been asked to come and talk to the House Judiciary Committee for a brief agency update on the training side. They're also interested in the agency director recruitment and also have an interest in what we've done to recruit a more diverse pool of training staff to the agency. We're also going forward to the June board for 2 really factors. One is we have to continue the process of our assistance to firefighter grant. So we've been successful for multiple biennium of getting a grant through the federal government to get assistance to firefighter training. That goes through multiple processes. If you ask for the grant, you ask to receive the funds, you have to ask to expend the funds, and we're going to go forward to complete that process. And then the second one that's important, or more important to you guys, is the Memorial Fund is unfortunately this biennium being taxed. We've had a lot more deaths than the fund can support. And so what we're doing is we're going forward to ask the legislature to increase the limitation on the fund. The fund has money in the bank, but the limitation that we have to spend is coming very close to not being able to cover its needs. So go forward in June in order to have that limitation.
Letters of support.
I think we'll be okay on that one. If we do, we'll certainly reach out to all of you and the board as well. The only other things I have to say is we have 2 goodbyes to say today. 2 members that will be very much missed. First, we have here for Mr. Zach Kinney a certificate of participation. Thank you very much. So on behalf of the board and on behalf of the committee and the department, thank you very much for your time. And then also, we also have another certificate of participation.
I'll say there are some people, just a reality of life, whose presence will be felt, whose absence will be felt tremendously. Meaning, Mark Roush, you are among those. Grateful for your participation over the years.
Thank you, John. It's sure been great being on this committee and getting to know how law enforcement works. Getting to know some of the people. I really enjoyed it.
And Mark, I'll just say that, like, I do this because this is my profession. Thank you for taking time to dedicate to my profession to make it better, and putting all that effort in. It means a lot to me.
Thank you,
Really
Zach.
appreciate it.
Okay, see you next time.
Mark, this is how